What's up, people? I'm Shaggy, the Opinionated Hippie, continuing and finishing my deep dive into Weather Report studio albums. Going to do the 6 that they released in the 80s. I think it was like 80, 81, 82, 83, 85, 86, like 6 in like 7 years. 5 of them they knew they had to do. Then they thought they were done, and they're like, nope, you owe us one. Then they did one more in 86. I like all of these. I think if I have complaints about these albums, there's 2, and the complaints probably get more prevalent about each album as we go through the decade. All props, mad props to Joe Zawinul for this relentless pursuit of new sounds, of being experimental with what he does with his synths, as like not relying on maybe like the same synthesizer sound every time he does anything. But sometimes in his relentless pursuit to like be innovative or to have the hottest new sound or do the hottest new thing, he picks sounds that have not aged well. And so there's a lot of this that is just, it's an 80s sound that just, it just evokes, for me, it just evokes certain negative feelings. I'm like, this sound. I like the playing, I like the performances, I like the attitude, I like the energy of all of these albums. I just think sometimes the sounds, the fact that there's like fake drums, there's drum machines, there's electronic stuff. Some of the synth sounds are a little too Disney for me at times. It's just electrical. If you've never seen the Electric Main Street Parade, then I think that song is on Google, on YouTube it. But yeah, but that's just, it's not the playing, it's not the performance, it's not the band. It's just the circumstances of the time. The only other complaint, and it's always a complaint, almost always with anything with Weather Report, is we need more Wayne. Give me more Shorter. And there's a couple times on the last couple albums where I'm like, wait a minute, is that a heavily processed Shorter solo, or is that a Joe synthesizer solo? So even at times when I think that is Shorter maybe soloing, I'm like, well, wait, maybe that isn't. So yeah, we just need more pure Wayne, and I think that would make these albums better. So that's it. I'm going to go from 6 to 1 and rank these. And then at the end of that, I'm going to put up the list in which I incorporate the ones from the 70s with the ones from the 80s. But let's start off with album number 6. That would be their 13th, 1985's Sportin' Life. Not a bad album. It's just the weakest album of the decade. I think the 80s production hinders some of this and just makes it a little bit, I do think some of the performances are maybe not as inspired, some of the stuff. But for the most part, I enjoy this album. There's a couple little minor quibbles I have about some of the sort of the production. There's a song on here, the last song on here, Ice Pick Willie, and maybe because the title is why. It's just like there's this like percussion instrument that keeps getting played that just seems like it's so intrusive in the mix. And there's just some weird sounds that they don't make me feel uncomfortable as much as they just don't work. Like maybe the intent was to do that. The title is called Ice Pick Willie, but I don't know. There are 2 great songs on this album. Indiscretions, nice, calm, but like prominent percussion intro. We get some piano. We get an awesome Wayne Shorter soloing. Anytime Shorter is like the centerpiece of a song, I think that's a win. Just a really nice, steady groove. That's on the first half of the album. The second half of the album has a song called Face on the Barroom Floor, which is this, it's like it's a Wayne-led kind of chill vibe, but your face is on the barroom floor, and it's not like the bar is still open and it's dark and people are like making noise and there's a band on the stage and you're just passed out in the middle of it. No, it's like this song feels like the lights are on, the house lights are on, like you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here, and you're just face down on the barroom floor. There's a little bit of a brightness to this. It verges on Tom Waits territory, like early Tom Waits, just that sort of like, the kind of drunken in the bar, LA, in some like seedy LA bar type vibe. We're not quite there, but everything Wayne is playing feels like there's a story. Like there's a story here, and it's really musically, this is a song I want Tom Waits to pick up and like provide us what the details are for this story. But a really kind of chill, sparse vibe. Absolutely fantastic song. Everything else, it's kind of like an 80s funky jazz electronic mix, heavy on the synths. Sometimes they sound warm, sometimes they sound cold. The first song, Corner Pocket, is pretty cool. Has some great Wayne vibes, some good synths vibes. The energy is good. Hot Cargo is kind of a hot mess, kind of like a little bit of a Latin flavor. We got some steel drums with a little bit of a Caribbean flavor, some like just weird keyboard synth energy. Not really sure how I feel about that. There's Confions. I'm saying that wrong, I'm sure. Has an acoustic guitar in it, some like weird, what sounds like a flute, but I think it's a synth, almost like a Spanish folky song. Really nice shorter solo at the end, but it just almost kind of doesn't fit. It's a weird vibe. Pearl on the half shell is kind of a great big steel drum sound, big jazz sound. They do a cover of What's Going On, the Marvin Gaye song, which I'm not quite sure how I feel about. Like, I really want to like it. There's a nice little passage in the middle where, again, Wayne is the centerpiece. It kind of works, but also I'm like, maybe not. They maybe need to go a little harder at it. And then Ice Pick Willie closes. But two fantastic songs. The rest of it's not bad. They're just little things that kind of maybe hurt the flow of the album, I think. So that would be my number 13, Sportin' Life, which means that would be my number 6 is their 13th, Sportin' Life. My number 5 is This Is This, their final album, the one they had to do because their contract said so. Came out in 1986. Like, you could call this electronic jazz, or not even electronic jazz, electronic improv. Like, I think if I was really familiar with the first 2 Weather Report albums, like that was all I knew, and then you played me this, I would never ever guess that this was Weather Report, 15 years later. I really like it though. I think 2 things that maybe I think I could possibly have bumped this up to maybe number 4, but Carlos Santana plays on 2 of the tracks, and nothing against Santana, but it is the first time electric guitar has appeared on a Weather Report album, and I don't like it. I just think it ruins. I was like, cool. They've never had an electric guitar in this jazz band. They've never tried to like do anything different or new, or they've just, and Santana shows up on the Contractually Obligated album. And Santana's not bad, but it kind of doesn't fit. I think the weakest song on here, Man with the Copper Fingers, features Santana for most of it, and it feels out of place. And so it's just, this maybe even could have been a slightly higher on this list, maybe at 4. But I actually really like this album, and it would be ranked even higher than 4 if Santana was not on it. Probably ranked higher than 3 if it wasn't made in the 80s. If this exact music was performed in like 72 with whatever instrumentation and analog recording they have in 72, I think this would be a fantastic album. This is the opener with a Santana playing guitar. It just has this really loose, upbeat jam vibe. By the end, it sounds like a synth-heavy Prince jam. It's actually kind of a good time. Face to Face, super fantastic. Kind of a world music, jazz, funk vibe. Weird electronic 80s instrumental. I'll Never Forget You, beautiful. Wayne gets to step up. There's like an emotional aspect to this. I think it's Wayne. This is the one where I was like, is that Wayne or are there synths? Either way, there's really nice chill solos. It's nice and calm and kind of reflective, and just the vibe is perfect. Jungle Stuff Part 1, got some cowboy funk to kind of open us up. Got some like vocalizations. Some that's like jazz singing, but there's some that's actually, I think, a foreign language that somebody's singing in, like an African language. Flirts with like a Peter Gabriel world music type 90s jam, something you would have done on like the Secret World Tour, but it works. Man with the Copper Friends, I think, is the weakest track. It's the second with Santana. Consequently, super chill vibe. Goes into the slightly bigger vibe, which doesn't get too big, but I don't think it's as successful as the super chill vibe. But then we go back to that super chill vibe, and it just works. It's just comfortable. It's calm. Update, a little bit frantic, a little bit anxious, a little bit all over the place, a little frenetic. Kind of, there's a walking bass line the whole time that just keeps things moving at a really rapid pace. I think this would be better if it was like more analog instruments and not synth stuff. And then the close in China Blues, super chill. The drum sounds hurt, but the vibe is cool. There's really nice percussion in here. There's some vocalizations. I like this album, and it could be, I think, a much better better experience if it wasn't recorded when it was recorded. But yeah, that would be my number 5 in the 80s. This is this. My number 4 is their 11th, released in 1983, Procession. I like this album. I think it's a pretty solid album from start to finish. I just think it's maybe not very ambitious. And so I think the sounds are cool. I think the energy is cool. We're not too deep into the 80s, so things aren't that bad. It's just not ambitious. It's like they're really just happy to be making music, and that's kind of the vibe that I get. There is a song with vocals, The Manhattan Transfer, guests on one of the songs. That Boy from New York City, wasn't that their big hit? Opens up with Procession, which is like this really like laid back, chill, almost sounds like a studio jam. Like it's almost like you're waiting for this procession to walk by, and it gets louder and louder as it gets to you, and then all these things kind of happen, and the energy kind of bounces and gets cool, and then the procession kind of slowly leaves and things get quiet again. With a fade out, I think there's a literal fade out maybe at the end of this song, like we just took a snippet of like a studio jam. There's a looseness to this. Like, again, it's not ambitious. They're really don't feel to be like, it doesn't feel like they're trying to do anything other than just like chill out and make cool music and release it. So it like, I think it kind of sets the tone for the rest of the album in a positive way, because it sets like it sets your expectations right where they need to be. The next song, Plaza Real, starts with like this slow, sparse start, like you're in this plaza waiting for your friends to show up. Then all of a sudden, all your friends are here and they're hanging out and there's noise and you're talking to different people and things are happening. It's not too crazy. Some cool synth sounds lurking about. And then at the end, everybody leaves. But it's a comfortable evening in the plaza. Next, we get Two Lines, which is a little more tightly wound than the rest of it. We get like a main hectic jazz theme. We get a shorter solo. We get a Zawinul solo. Some awesome percussion and bass throughout the entire thing. Where the Moon Goes might be the highlight of this. Just this really upbeat, sort of swaying, bass-driven energy. Super fun. We got vocals, kind of herky-jerky, some cool musical runs throughout the whole thing. Some great shorter almost throughout the entire thing, just kind of weaving and winding throughout. Some big, crazy, hectic jazz energy at the end. By far the most ambitious thing on this album, I think, but in the way in that, like, we build up to this like bigger, more grander experience, and then we're gonna like exit out. The Well is the next song. The sax, the opening sax almost sounds like it's like lost in a well. I wrote that it should be called 5 a.m. night cam watching action at a well. It's like this really sparse and kind of calm, and then every once in a while a little bit of flurry of action happens. You're like, oh, a deer showed up at the well. That kind of energy. But it's kind of work. It's a lonely vibe, but it works really well after the sort of bigness of Where the Moon Goes. And then Molasses Row, some more vocalizations, a little more upbeat. This is a typical, more bouncy jazz vibe. Get a nice Wayne solo, a Zawinul synth solo, great bass throughout the whole thing. A good album. Like, I enjoy listening to this. It's just maybe not very ambitious. And then that would be number 4, which means number 3 is their 12th, 1984's Domino Theory. Really, the energy on this album is fantastic. We have a new bass player, Victor Bailey is his name. Omar Hakim is on drums. We got Joe Rusi on percussion, and then we got Wayne and Joe. The only thing that really hurts this album is the 80s-ness of it all. And there is several of the songs on here do kind of sound like early Weather Report, where they just went into the studio and kind of jammed for a while, and we got whatever that produced, either, an edited version of it or an actual snippet of it. And it's really just the sound that kind of drags this down a little bit. We open up, the first song, Can It Be Done, has some very space Star Wars movie synthy stuff going on, and there's this huge 80s brightness to it. It's a slow ballad. Carl Anderson then comes in and starts singing. It's like a synthy, soulful jazz. I don't think it's the strongest start. I kind of wish this song was buried a little bit deeper. I think it would work better, but I think almost everything else after this ups the game after the opener. D-flat waltz is one of the most active, herky-jerky waltzes. If you actually have to dance this waltz, like, you're going to be like feeling a little uncomfortable afterwards. It is just some really weird synth processed, funky waltz jazz jam that says a lot of electronic energy and synthesized energy. There's some scat singing, there's a Wayne solo, there's a Joe solo, there's a little bass solo, super busy. The energy is kind of great. It's just the 80s sound is kind of rough. But it's like 11 minutes of just like really aggressive waltz chaos. The Peasant follows, which almost has like a folky world music vibe, kind of like when I think the Zappa 73 Petite Wazoo Band would fall into some of these, like the Trudging Through Tundra type jam. The Dead, there was a show from late January 79 that jumps to my mind. I think it was a post-play-in jam or a post-terrapin jam that took up like the entirety of the middle part of the second set. And it went into this like almost like percussion-driven world music kind of, we're not really jamming to go anywhere, but just to enjoy this space. Flirting with the little Peter Gabriel, world music vibe, but that's the Peasant, and it works really well after the more hectic energy of D-flat waltz. Predator has this kind of, as it should, creepy 80s synth, kind of funky bass-driven energy. A little too much of the 80s sound in this one. Blues Sound, note 3, super calm, chiller. This feels like the purest jazz song on here. For about the first minute and a half, it gets a little bit more urgent after about a minute and a half, but it still has this slow burning intensity that just kind of works. It also feels like they are just jamming and kind of making it up as it goes. At times it's sparse and it's playful, it gets darker, but it feels like really more like if Zawinul had access to all these 80s sound back in 70 and 71, this is like what their albums might have sounded like. Swamp Cabbage, yeah. If you're going to name a song Swamp Cabbage, it better sound somewhat like this. A little bit funky, a little bit groovy, a little bit Zydeco vibe that's sneaking in there through the synths, but it's definitely got some funky swap energy. And then we close out with Domino Theory, which has this really nice, almost like low-key pulsating energy that gives it like this almost like techno vibe, like ahead of its time or maybe of its time, or maybe actually after its time, since this is 86, but really cool techno vibe that works, kind of some eerie noises, like this like atmospheric electricity nighttime vibe. Some really busy bass in here. There's this hectic pulsating energy that's like contrasted with this calmness, and I don't know what is happening with this Domino Theory, but it's an interesting song. It's a good way to close the album. A strong effort. And I think if it was made 10 years earlier, it would be a much more enjoyable listen. But that would be my number 3 in the 80s, their 12th, 1984's Domino Theory. My number 2 is their 10th, 1982's Weather Report. This would be Pastorius's last, Esking's last. Kind of a chill album. There were definitely some bigger, brighter, more like ambitious moments, some frantic moments, but there's a lot of kind of chill tracks on here that just work. I think Pastorius's bass style works anytime we kind of bring it down and he's allowed to maybe step forward and shine a little, which happens on here. Opens up with Volcano for Hire, which kind of sounds like a kind of a frantic celebration surrounding a volcano. Like we haven't yet reached the part where maybe the volcano is going to erupt, but maybe we're celebrating the fact that it will for some reason, or celebrating the fact that we've sacrificed something so it won't. Nice, really interesting percussion intro, some weird, frantic synth sax stuff going on, but some good hectic energy. Current Affairs is a much slower, more dramatic piece, almost as if, wow, wouldn't it be awesome if we lived in a world in which there was nothing going on in current affairs? But this one feels like it's all about Wayne. Wayne is bringing it in this one. Has a more straightforward sound. It's not as crazy or synth heavy. It's just like, yeah, calm it down. Let Wayne do his stuff. Nothing's going on in the world. So let's just kick back and listen to jazz. What a great place that would be. NYC, this nice 10-minute long song that is 3 parts, 41st Parallel, which is kind of feels like your upbeat nightlife, bouncy, lively jazz, that kind of thing. Eventually, we go into the dance, which is like this super chill part. Then we go into this swing section. Jaco is like low key, just going off for a while, but it's definitely more of an intimate dance. And then we have Crazy About Jazz, which is like thematic, kind of more upbeat jazz. We got incredible percussion throughout this whole thing. Super tasty Wayne Shorter solo to super tasty Zawinul solo. A really nice 10-minute representation of some aspect of New York City. Dara Factor 1 is next. Really awesome percussion intro setup. The percussion on this is amazing. The others kind of slowly drop in for a while. There's a definite improv vibe to this, like an early weather report. Hey, somebody start something and we'll all join in at some point. Wayne does not finally come in until about the 3-minute mark. And then when he does, it's awesome. It's playful. It's laid back. But this definitely feels like somebody start playing. Let's loosen up in the studio and record some stuff. Awesome, awesome vibe. When It Was Now, also pretty chill. Kind of mid-tempo and bouncy, but also pretty chill. Again, great rhythmic stuff going on with the percussion section. Low-key, progressive, funky, in like a really sort of mellow way. Doesn't really go anywhere as a song, but super compelling. Speechless, which is super chill, bass-led. We get these dramatic moments that kind of sneak in, I think twice throughout the song, but for the most part, a super chill song. Speechless. You were left speechless. And then Dara Factor 2, which is like percussion intro, drops us right into this nice upbeat 70s kind of jazz vibe. We get some vocalizations. So this one also has a really loose, jammy studio vibe. It's really nice piano, sort of shorter interactions towards the end. Solid album from start to finish. Really good stuff. Great percussion, kind of chill. My number 2, their number 10, Weather Report, which means that my favorite from the 80s is their 9th 1980s Night Passage. Pastorius is absolutely fantastic on this. He is just absolutely bringing this. Yeah, it's just strong. It's pretty straightforward. It's just really good. It just works from start to finish. Night Passage, the opener, is this really tightly wound, upbeat, bass-driven jazz. It's essentially like we get like this theme into a solo, and then we get like compositional elements throughout into more solos. The keyboard sounds are kind of warm and not alienating. Pretty straightforward, upbeat, late 70s jazz. Dream Clock kind of sounds like what a dream clock probably sounds like. Super chill, keyboard and bass opening, some nice subtle cymbals, Shorter comes in, kind of some haunting Jaco playing during the fade out. Like it's got a little dream clock, hazy action to it. Port of Entry, some really busy percussion in this, even though we kind of stay mid-tempo and chill. Piano, it kind of becomes perky, a little bit weirdness, becomes kind of funky in here. It almost sounds like it's kind of a long song, and it kind of sounds like the first maybe 2/3 of it is you're entering this port of entry, like you're on a ship and you're going to a foreign port, or I was visualizing an actual ship like landing somewhere. And then you're like the first 2/3 of this is like everything is really unfamiliar and kind of weird and kind of herky-jerky, and you're kind of reacting to a lot of stuff. And it's not dangerous and you don't necessarily feel threatened, but after you finally get the gist of what's going on in this place, like then it kind of becomes more playful and fast-paced, and the song ends like the last third of the song has this like, oh yeah, I can fall into the flow of whatever this is. Yeah, I love titles in jazz. Like you can't just instrumentals, you got to name it something so I can imagine what I think you're doing, and that's what I think is happening here. Forlorn, title is completely apt for the mood of this song. Great keyboard, slow, spacey, kind of a longing vibe. Rockin' in Rhythm, yeah, a Duke number. It has that swing. Synths are great. Piano and bass are especially popping. Yeah, we got a little Duke Ellington in here. Fast City, upbeat, but kind of steady jazz. Some really hyper drums. We have a nice solo section. The title, again, is perfect. This sounds like a fast city. Shorter is absolutely going off. He is soloing. He has given us everything he has. Some great synths in here. 3 Views of a Secret. We get this really chill synth, like bass-driven kind of intro that's pretty dramatic and slow. And then about the 2.5 minute mark, we get this big vibe into this more urgent thing. Like that must be the second view of The Secret. Shorter still carrying a lot of weight here, doing a lot of heavy lifting, which is awesome. And then we get a synth solo. And then at the end, maybe the third view of The Secret, like Joe and Shorter are kind of going at it together, which is pretty cool. And then we close with Madagascar. Nice percussion intro. It's still calm, but kind of foreboding. Kind of feels like you're floating around the coast of Madagascar and like you're looking inland and like, again, you've never been there before, so you're not sure what's there, but there is a little more sense of danger in this. But then at the same time, from where you are, you feel safe, so it's also kind of chill. It's like an 11-minute track. It's pretty cool. Picks up energy in the last third to kind of maybe maintain the narrative that you've decided to go land and actually interact with whatever is on the coast of Madagascar. I'm imagining the cartoon movie, so you got to move it. So that's it. But yeah, that's my favorite album of the 80s would be the first one they released, their number 9, Night Passage, which means that's what they look like in the 80s typewritten version. I don't think any of them are bad. My biggest complaints, like I said, it's the 80s sound, and we always need more Wayne Shorter. But if I were to take these 6 and incorporate them into the other list, they pretty much just get attached to the bottom, except for Night Passage, which I'm going to bump it 1 up above. Just move it a little bit above that last 70s album. I think maybe it's a little more engaging than Mr. Gone. And it just seems a little more pure maybe. But yeah, I would pop that up. And Mr. Gone's not a bad album, but I think Night Passage is maybe just a little bit better. So that's how I would rank these albums. All right, that's all I got for the Weather Report studio albums. You know how comments work. If you want to leave one, subscribe, like, share, comment, do that stuff. And if you've not listened to this band, go listen to any album. Because really, if you can understand that they're going to have great ones and then good ones, any entry point is a good entry point. Because I think they all have stuff to offer. Just understand that some of them were made in the 80s. And that's a warning that should be put on all albums that were made in the 80s for the most part. All right, I'm done. Peace. Talk to you later.